Good evening. I'm Judy Woodruff on the NewsHour tonight. Elusive relief. We're live with one of the White House's top economic advisors to discuss what the president's prepared to do to help millions of unemployed Americans in the pandemic. Then, schools' dilemma. As the pandemic persists, an increasing number of districts opt for remote learning, despite the challenges of learning from home. And searching for justice. All that and more on tonight's PBS NewsHour.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by...
When the world gets complicated, a lot goes through your mind. With Fidelity Wealth Management, a dedicated advisor can tailor advice and recommendations to your life. That's Fidelity Wealth Management.
Consumer Cellular. Johnson & Johnson. Financial services firm Raymond James. Women's Suffrage Centennial Commission. The Candida Fund, committed to advancing restorative justice and meaningful work through investments in transformative leaders and ideas. More at candidafund.org. Carnegie Corporation of New York, supporting innovations in education, democratic engagement, and the advancement of international peace and security at carnegie.org. And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Fresh data tonight highlights the U.S. economy's deep scars from COVID-19 amid negotiations on a new government relief package. Another 1.2 million people filed for state unemployment benefits last week. That is 20 straight weeks of more than 1 million claims. The talks between the White House and Democrats include restoring federal jobless benefits, but there is no agreement in sight. We'll hear from our congressional correspondent Lisa Desjardins after the news summary. The pandemic's nationwide toll in human lives is nearing 160,000 as confirmed cases approach 4.9 million. One of the latest to be infected is the governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine. He tested positive today and canceled plans to greet President Trump in Cleveland this afternoon. In Beirut, Lebanon, unanimously to ban any use of the video sharing app TikTok from federally issued devices. The House had already approved it. Lawmakers pointed to TikTok's Chinese ownership and said that it raises national security concerns over data collection by China. President Trump has threatened to Wall Street stocks scored new gains and hit a new benchmark. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 185 points to close near 27,387. The Nasdaq rose 109 points to finish above 11,000 for the first time, and the S&P 500 added 21. Still to come on the NewsHour, Congress and the White House struggle to counteract the economic damage inflicted by COVID-19. An increasing number of school districts opt for remote learning and all of its challenges. 75 years on, survivors of heroic...
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
A deal on the next coronavirus relief package seems far from sight, as Democrats and Republicans are still at an impasse on key issues. Our Lisa Desjardins joins us now to report on where things stand. So, Lisa, what do we know at this hour?
Judy, hopes for a deal this week are very dim. There has been no real progress between the two sides in the last 48 hours. Though they have continued to meet, it doesn't seem like any side is giving in on some of the key issues here. And in fact, Republicans tonight and all day today were saying that if there's no deal, they are increasingly considering executive action by President Trump. But Judy, it's not clear exactly what President Trump would do. Perhaps he could initiate a payroll tax, a cut of some sort, but that's not even popular with all of his own Senate Republicans. So some Democrats think the executive action idea may be a bluff. It's not clear. Judy, I can tell you right now, the timeline seems to be moving away from this week and into a potential deal next week. Republicans don't like that, but that seems to be where we are. Overall, Judy, it's a staring contest at this moment over a dozen different issues. And think about this. These negotiations are probably the largest divide our two parties have had in terms of dollar figures in modern American history. They are maybe $2 trillion apart on what this deal needs to look like.
And Lisa, let me ask you to drill down a little on one issue that I know a lot of people care about, of course, and that's aid to schools. What is known about the differences on that at this point?
Right, it's worth looking at that. Let's talk about the dollar figures first of all. Republicans at this time are proposing, Democrats rather, Republicans are proposing $90 billion for schools, that's K through 12 and higher ed. Democrats have upped what they would like from their original ask in May. Now they are requesting $345 billion. They would divide it different ways. Republicans in their offer right now would like 2/3 of that money for the K through 12 schools to go to schools which reopen. So Republicans pushing for reopening in some form. Democrats instead would distribute that money by population. So there, Judy, you see the crux of the impasse right now. The two sides are divided over dollar figures by a large amount and over philosophy, over how to handle the coronavirus and reopening itself.
Such a frustrating moment. And so many Americans watching these negotiations very closely. Lisa, I know you'll continue to. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now for the Trump administration's view of these negotiations, we are joined by Larry Kudlow. He's the director of the National Economic Council. Larry Kudlow, welcome back to the NewsHour. We just heard our Lisa Desjardins say this is like a staring contest. There doesn't seem to be any tangible progress. What do you see? Do you see the two sides any closer together?
Well, thanks for having me back on, Judy. Look, they are negotiating right now as we talk. They're up on the Hill. Chief Mark Meadows, Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin, and the Democratic leadership and Republican leadership of both houses and both parties. So they are talking. I think it's fair to say that the tone has probably improved a bit. They are going through a number of lists of items that divide them, see where compromises are possible. But no, I think the reporting was accurate. I don't think any deals have been made. Chief Meadows has said if nothing is achieved by Friday, we might conceivably walk away from it. That is, the Trump people might walk away from it. And the president has said repeatedly, and he said it again today, that he can do a lot of important things on unemployment extensions, on preventing evictions, on a payroll tax cut. He can do many things by executive order or presidential fiat, and he doesn't necessarily need these negotiations. So we will see how it turns out. At the moment, I don't think I have much new to report.
Well, let me ask you about what the president is saying there. Just for clarify something, first of all, we heard Lisa say some Democrats say they think the president is just bluffing about acting unilaterally. You're saying he's serious?
I think he's quite serious, and I myself have been engaged in a lot of the drafting of these orders, and particularly the payroll tax cut. But we are, again, looking at the eviction stuff, student loans, and various employment reforms, and possibly added benefits for reemployment. So this is a very serious matter. Right now, the lawyers up in the White House counsel's office are poring over a payroll tax cut draft.
Well, let me ask you about that. A number of things, but on the payroll tax cut, as you know, a number of Republicans oppose this. All the Democrats oppose it. Does the president have the authority to cut the payroll tax, which, after all, goes to Social Security and Medicare?
Yes, of course, but our lawyers think he does have the authority. A lot of people have the authority. Certainly, as you know, we have deferred payment of the income tax. In the legislation last March, there was a business side payroll tax holiday. A lot of people think he has the authority to defer the payroll tax on the worker side. I don't think Republicans oppose it. I think the issue was rather lukewarm. I think right now Republicans on the Hill are looking to put more economic growth incentives into a potential package. I think many of them would welcome the payroll tax. It creates a terrific incentive for hiring, for new employment, and for people to return back to work. You know, if you tax something less, you'll get more of it. And I think that thought is uppermost in Republican minds.
Well, I've actually heard several Republican senators say they're against it, including, I believe, the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. But what I want to ask you also about, Larry Kudlow, is unemployment benefits. The president mentioned that he thought he might be able to do something by executive order. How would he do that? Where would the money come from? I know there's some unspent money from what was passed in the spring. Is that what the White House is looking at?
There may be some repurposing of unspent funds, Judy. I can't say, I'm not a lawyer. They're combing through a number of things. I don't want to give away, I don't want to negotiate here. I'm just saying it's something we are worried about, first of all. I mean, look, the economy is doing much, much better. We all still believe in the V-shaped recovery. We had very good news today on unemployment claims dropping again. We've seen a housing boom, a manufacturing boom, inventories at rock bottom. It looks to us like a self-sustaining recovery. But there is still hardship, there is still heartbreak as we deal with the virus, and we want to make sure that people have a good, constructive unemployment plan with, I might add, added benefits for returning to work. So we are looking at all that carefully.
Well, just to clarify, this is the 20th straight week when over 1 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefits. Over 33 million Americans have lost their jobs. So for you to say the economy is doing better, I think, you know, that needs to be in perspective. But I do want to ask you, are you saying that there's money that was appropriated that you're saying the president, that the White House believes that he could then create unemployment benefits, what, $600 a week, which is what was flowing up until last week?
Well, I don't want to put numbers on it, and I don't want to give away any of the legal drafts. I'm just saying it's something he is looking at very carefully, along with the eviction, and along with the payroll tax, and along with some student loan breaks as well. These are all part of what our council is looking at, Treasury, NEC, OMB, and so forth. And yes, we've been very keen on that. I just want to say one thing, Judy, though. I appreciate the context of the jobs. As I said, there's still a good deal of hardship going on out there. However, jobs have come back by nearly 8 million in the last couple of months. Unemployment claims have fallen substantially from the highs of this winter, and a lot of people have gone back to work, and some of that was because of a bipartisan rescue package last March, which really helped the job story and really helped deal with the virus. Unfortunately, we can't seem to find any more bipartisanship, and that is a problem which is leading the president to act on his own.
But I'm sure you don't deny that until there's a vaccine, until there's some sort of a solution that is not in sight right now, many small businesses will remain closed. Businesses are just not operating anymore. They can't employ people. But very quickly,
Well,
Larry Kudlow, I want to ask,
if I may, you know, you mentioned that. Look, we spent an inordinate amount of money on vaccine research. Right now, there are 6 or 7 companies that are in stage 3, phase 3 of the vaccine, which are experts suggesting may come before the end of the year. So I'm really proud of that and hopeful and prayerful that we can get that done.
Right. And I know everyone shares that hope and that prayer. But just quickly, on the divide on schools, as you know, the Republican proposal is to make 2/3 of that money contingent on schools being physically open, in-class experience. A lot of teachers, a lot of parents just are not prepared to send their children back to school. Why have, if you will, a punitive approach in terms of giving money to schools?
Well, look, I mean, we've offered over $100 billion And so many groups, I mean, there's divisions here like everything else, but so many groups of doctors